Today's episode focuses on one of the most influential and impactful coaches of the modern NFL. Not only did he possess a unique vision for offensive schemes, but he had an equally impressive eye for finding greatly talented assistants to help him implement that vision. Known as the father of the West Coast offense, of course, the coach we will be talking about today is none other than the great Bill Walsh. Walsh began his NFL coaching career under Hall of Fame coach Sid Gilman and Al Davis of the Oakland Raiders. Both were revolutionaries of the NFL passing game in their own right. However, it was with another Hall of Fame NFL head coach that he spent most of his understudy with, Paul Brown. Brown provided Walsh with an offensive coordinator position for the new expansion team, the Cincinnati Bengals. Walsh was also given the AFL's Rookie of the Year at quarterback to work with in 1968, Greg Cook, possessed a lively cannon of an arm. Unfortunately, Cook suffered a serious injury to his shoulder that severely weakened his throw power. But this didn't stop the young protege offensive coordinator. He shifted the offense to focus more on timing, motion, and precision passing. What would eventually become Walsh's West Coast offense was born. When Paul Brown retired in 1975, Walsh was passed up as his successor, and a disgruntled Walsh went on to be a head coach in the college ranks instead. 2 years later, the downward trending 49ers franchise called up Walsh to be their new head coach, and the rest is history. Walsh would go 92, 59, and 1 in his career, while going on to win 3 Super Bowls. Along with this historic success, he also planted a legendary NFL coaching tree. In this episode, we will focus on that tree and the 5 most agreed upon branches of that tree. Let's dive right in. First up is Sam Wyche, who got his start as Walsh's quarterbacks coach from 1979 to 1982, before becoming a head coach of the Bengals in 1984, and later the Buccaneers in 1992. He amassed an 84-107 record, and at his peak, he won the AFC Championship game in 1988. I won't go too deep into the extended branches of these coaches, but I do think it's worth mentioning in this video just to give a scale of how much impact a singular coach can have, and Bill Walsh's tree is a great example of this. Now, not every extended branch is accounted for here, but I'm sure we'll have future episodes that go more in depth on some of these branches in the future, so for right now it's just kind of a base level with some main names on it. With that being said, Sam Wyche's only extended branch is that of Coach Mike Mularkey. Next is George Seifert, a defensive specialist who joined Walsh's 49ers staff in 1980 as a secondaries coach and later would become the defensive coordinator. Seifert was Walsh's successor on the 49ers, taking over as head coach in 1989, where he coached until 1996. In that time, he won 2 Super Bowls. He would later return as an NFL head coach in 1999 for the Panthers, which turned out to be 3 unspectacular seasons. In total, he went 114 and 62 as an NFL head coach. Not too bad. His coaching tree involves names like Mike McCoy, Mark Trestman, and more. Our next coach is Dennis Green, who first joined the 49ers as a special teams coach for 1 season in 1979 and would later return as the receivers coach in 1986 after spending 5 years as a head coach at Northwestern University. He again returned to the college ranks as a head coach at Stanford after Walsh left the 49ers in 1988. He finally made the leap to NFL head coach in 1992 with the Minnesota Vikings. He coached there for 10 years. He made several playoff appearances, but usually went one and done. Several years later, in 2004, he got another shot, that being with the Cardinals for 3 seasons, but he never had a winning season while he was in Arizona. In total, he went 113 and 94 in his career. However, he did create a very nice extended branch for this coaching tree. As head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, he would hire Brian Billick. Billick would later go on to school Jack Del Rio. Green also hired Mike Tice, who himself brought along Scott Linehan. And last but not least, Green also hired Tony Dungy, who would become a Super Bowl winning head coach with the Indianapolis Colts. Dungy continues to expand the tree with even more branches, with names like Lovie Smith, Mike Tomlin, and Rod Marinelli, just to name a couple. Our next head coach is one that we have briefly covered in a previous episode regarding Andy Reid. This is, of course, Mike Holmgren. Walsh hired Holmgren in 1986 as the quarterback's coach for 3 years before being promoted to an offensive coordinator following Walsh's departure. Holmgren turned his 3 years as offensive coordinator in San Francisco under George Seifert into a head coaching job in Green Bay, and later with the Seahawks. Over his impressive 17 years as a head coach, he went 161 and 111 with 2 NFC championships and 1 Super Bowl victory. But even more impressive is the extended branches that grew out from Holmgren. Names that include Andy Reid, Steve Mariucci, Mike Sherman, Marty Mornhinweg, and more. Again, if you'd like to hear more about this extended branch and how deep it really goes, check out my episode on Andy Reid. Finally, we have Ray Rhodes. Rhodes was a longtime assistant who started under Bill Walsh in 1981 and continued to coach as defensive backs coach for 10 years under both Walsh and Seifert. He then got a defensive coordinator job under Mike Holmgren for 2 years and another as defensive coordinator in San Francisco before finally getting a shot in 1995 as head coach of the Eagles. He ran the show there for 4 years before moving on to be the head coach of the Packers for 1 more season in 1999. His first 2 years with the Eagles started out hot. He made 2 playoff appearances in his first 2 seasons, but by his last season in Philadelphia, he only went 3-13. In total for his career, he went 37, 42, and 1. He even gave first-time NFL head coaching jobs to names like Sean Payton, Bill Callahan, and John Harbaugh. And thus, that concludes a coaching tree that would forever change the NFL landscape. The legendary mind of Bill Walsh saw his vision and innovation of the West Coast offense be planted and spread throughout the league. Him, along with the 5 main branches of his tree, would finish with a total record of 601 wins, 475 losses, and 2 ties. Bill Walsh stands as one of the pillars of the modern NFL, with a lasting legacy that will truly never be forgotten. And that's all I have for you guys today. All information in this video comes from ProFootballReference.com, ESPN, the San Francisco Gate, and Wikipedia. As usual, I would love to hear your guys' thoughts in the comments below. And please, feel free to say anything you would like, even if you think it's something that I got wrong or that it's something I left out of the video. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing to me is that the truth and the correct information is what's being shared. Speaking of being shared, I encourage you to share this video with any other football fans you know who might also like this content, and encourage them to subscribe to help keep this channel going. I genuinely appreciate the support. Thank you all very much.